Hello and welcome to our podcast and video series, What is Creative Therapy? Today our guest is Jodi Mullen. Jodi has a PhD in play therapy, is a licensed mental health counsellor, registered play therapy supervisor, and has a master's in child-centred play therapy. Jodi has been working in the field of counselling and play therapy for 25 years now and is the professor at the State University of New York, Oswego in the Counselling and Psychological Services Department, where she coordinates the Mental Health Counselling Program and Graduate Certificate Program in Play Therapy. She's also the Director of Integrative Counselling Services in New York State. Dr. Mullen is an international speaker and author. She has authored several manuscripts on play therapy and counselling. Dr. Mullen navigates the world of child rearing on her podcast, Freakishly Well-Behaved Kids, and is about to launch a book on that same topic later this year. Most importantly, she is the proud mother of two lovely children, Andrew and Leah. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you.
You've been working in play therapy for a while. Tell me how you got started.
Oh, okay. This is kind of an interesting story. So I have been doing play therapy since 1990. Let's see, graduated. First, I have to do a little math, which as a social scientist, that will take me a second. So I graduated with my master's degree in 1994. So 1993, I took a course in play therapy as part of my graduate program. And the only reason I took the course, it wasn't required, was because it worked in that time slot for me. I had no interest in play therapy. I didn't even know what it was. It was the first time the course was being taught. So I didn't know, is it, kind of an easy course, or was I going to have a lot of work? And I had no interest in working with children because I had already been working with children in the field. And all that my experience had taught me by this point was that children hated me, and there was some nice reciprocity because I actually hated them too. So it worked out perfectly. And then I took this course, and our class meetings were 2.5 hours long. So we met once a week for 2.5 hours. And after the first night of the class, I went back and I started using a few things that we learned in those first 2.5 hours. It changed my life. So from that point, I just really dove in, wanted to learn as much as I could about play therapy. So everything I was reading and researching, and then ultimately writing about and doing, and I just wanted to be all about play therapy. So how I got started was by accident.
Like they're starting, so that's wonderful.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. And in the years that you've been working in play therapy, have you experienced any setbacks?
I think that there are some setbacks that anybody who's doing this work can kind of count on, but if you let them truly set you back, I think that's where it's problematic. So I will say that there's regular challenges you can anticipate, like that we speak a different language. Those of us who do play therapy speak a different language than the people in the legal system, and we speak a different language than people in the medical field, and even educational professionals who work with children. We also speak a different language oftentimes to parents, and so I think what happens is that we run up against those walls rather frequently. The other thing I think that happens for all of us who work with children, regardless of if you're a therapist or not, is that you're frequently dealing with the person who has the least amount of power, in their family, or, they don't have any power. So that being said, I think that could become a setback. But for me, that has always been like, it's a challenge, and I want to rise to that, not allow it to be a setback. I also think, this might be a long answer, but I also think there some setbacks are things that we do to ourselves, like have expectations that are unrealistic about how far a child can go based on development, or how far a child can go based on what the family will allow them to do. I think that can sometimes get in our way if our expectations aren't, well suited.
Yeah. What have been your greatest wins?
My greatest wins? Well, I think, for one thing has been able, that I was just lucky enough to be trained in play therapy before I became a parent. So I think that I was able to take what I learned and have experienced working with the children I did and turn that into a way that I understood my children and was able to kind of work that around so that it influenced my parenting. I think has been my greatest win. And then the other is that kids who are just not, whatever their reason they're referred, they're just not supposed to ever come out of the other side. Like everybody's already kind of said, they're never going to X or they're never going to be able to do Y. When they do, that's, that I always want to sort of high five myself in those moments. Yes, we got it. Recognizing that, that I really am just like a part of that, that I just create that part of the process and the child really does it themselves, but having somebody believe in that they can, I think always feels like that there's a win every day. I just finished a session with a child where they laughed for the first time, and to me, like, yes, that's a win.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's gold. Thank you. Is there a mentor that's influenced you more than anyone else in the play therapy field?
Probably two. I would say two people. One was my instructor in that original course that I took, who later, his name's Dave Roderick, and he later became my supervisor in play therapy, and then he became my supervisor in becoming a supervisor in play therapy. So he changed my life. I don't know how else to say it. And then Athena Drews has been a constant ever since her and I met. We are both from New York State, and we were part of the New York Association for Play Therapy. And since our first meeting, she has always been super generous with her knowledge and spirit and really mentorship. I saw her at the New York State Play Therapy Conference 2 months ago, and even then, having been in the field for over 20 years now, she still had mentorship that was very meaningful to me. So I think Dave got me started, and Athena has kept me going.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. You've been working on a fantastic podcast and a book to be released later in the year, which we're excited about, called Freakishly Well-Behaved Children. Can you tell us anything about what we can look forward to in that book?
Sure. It's really something that I was saying earlier about how being a play therapist has informed the way that I parent, and how the title of the podcast and book even emerged was that a friend of mine who I've known my whole life, basically, when he was around my children, said, "Your children are freakishly well behaved." And so I thought that was just so catchy, and I loved it. So the podcast really developed first, and it was just like, how can I take all these lessons that I've learned from the children about how to be with children and apply it to parenting, and then let other parents in on this, right? And so I began doing that at writing at the same time, and actually I really started working on this in earnest on a visit to Australia a couple of years ago, and then decided that the book really needed to get out there. So it's 20 principles of 20 parenting principles that really are based on what either one I learned directly as a play therapist from children, or from the process of play therapy, and then how those can be used in parenting in like really simple ways that bring, play therapy is based on the relationship you create with that child. And so what better place to bring that than to the parenting relationship? And what I really tried to do here is simplify them and make them, the other thing that I thought was important was give parents lots of examples, tell them about my bloopers, which I make tons of mistakes, and so what that looks like, and that they can expect that they're going to make mistakes as well. And then there's even some in the book opportunities to journal and worksheets that you can start working through them. So before you even begin to implement them with your children or implement them at a higher level with your kids, that you have done some practice already. So I thought that would make parents feel more confident. And I think that's really important, that so many parents, their parenting esteem is rather low. And so one of the things that the goals that I had in mind was, and always have in mind when I'm consulting with parents, but in this bigger way through the podcast and the book, was how can I help parents with their parenting esteem so that they feel better about their relationships with their children and better about what they're doing with their kids.
Yeah, fantastic. If there were 3 tips that you would offer those people working in any way with children, what might they be?
Well, first and foremost, and I believe so heavily in this is actually something that emerged from my work on my dissertation, which seems like 100 years ago, but that children really have their own culture, and that in order to really be able to connect with children and to see the world from their perspective is to just appreciate what it is like as a child. And for me, I think if we think of it as a culture, like they have values and rules and their own set of personal space and ways of communicating, that is different than the set that we have in the culture of adulthood, so to speak. That I think that is a game changer. Whether you're a parent or a teacher or a play therapist or another kind of mental health professional, that if you can do that, then you can really start to change your relationships with children. So that would be one. Another is just recognizing that play is their language, and that they tell us everything we need to know through their play, and that if we could take a step back and just sort of appreciate what they're communicating through their play, is that enriches again our relationships with children, but the communication process that we can have both ways. Yeah. And the third tip, I would say, kids really need us to be present, and so it seems that we give youngsters a lot more slack about this, is being connected to technology, and but one of the things I observe in myself, but other parents as well, is that frequently we are connected to our devices and not maintaining eye contact or trying to with our kids, or not really listening. And so I think it sounds kind of cliche, but at the same time, just being present with your kids is really important.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm very glad that you like children now, and I'm sure they love you.
I love them now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Jodi. I really appreciate your insights.
Thank you for letting me talk about it. This was fun, Jackie.
Jodi Mullen will be hosting a webinar called Play Therapy Essentials for All, and you can get details of that webinar on our website, Sydney Centre for Creative Change.